Speaking of innovations, I want to turn this over to Darrel next, because one of the things that Filmation has not been given nearly enough credit for is how it treated diversity in its cartoons. Filmation was the first company to feature African American characters on television in cartoons. They were the first company to feature Native American characters. They made it a strong point that all of their series had strong female characters. So Darrel, I know that you grew up watching Filmation and also worked at the company. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of the diversity of Filmation?
Well, basically, as Andy said, when I was a kid, I was a big Saturday morning freak. I would watch Superman, Frankenstein Jr., the CBS line, the ABC stuff, everything. But when the Hardy Boys came on for the first time, I saw there was a kid that looked like me, and that was Pete Jones. I liked the fact that they didn't make a big deal about it. He was there, he got the missions, he got the stories. There was no big deal that a black character was, it was always a group of white kids. And as Filmation continued, you had a situation where you had not only black characters in strong roles, yet one show, Space Signals, where a black woman was the team leader. And that was a difference. You had Asian superheroes that man came up with. I remember, he doesn't know this story, but I know that when Young Signals first premiered, ABC had a fit because they saw that the show's ratings weren't that great, really, against Super Friends, but they noted they got stuff we don't have. We want heroes like that. And it was actually because of Lou doing the show that Black Vulcan appeared, that Pat Schneeper showed up on the Hanna-Barbera show, and Hanna-Barbera. Okay, those other guys, the guys in the valley, and that these characters started coming into other producers' shows, and I give him a lot of credit for pushing that. And he did it because he just wanted to. I mean, it was a hard thing back then because it was very difficult for networks to want to do shows with black characters because, quote, you couldn't sell them in the South. And Lou didn't care. He just did it. And eventually he got, especially when Fat Albert came along a couple of years later, and that really kind of knocked a lot of doors down and made the whole idea of doing black characters acceptable, making Asian characters, making pretty much any race you wanted to be. And plus, he didn't treat these characters like they were black. He tried to have everybody. Like you all could watch a Fat Albert show, you could see the kids having fun. It's not about them being poor, not about them, living in the ghetto. It's about a bunch of kids getting together and having a good time and learning on the way. And that kind of influenced everything. It started running TV in ways that even other students didn't want in that. And Lou gets a lot of credit for that.
Filmation was really instrumental in terms of bringing live action to Saturday morning as well in really innovative ways. Space Academy and Jason Star Command and Part 2 and shows like that were, they may look cheaper these days, but back then they were cutting edge. And can you talk in terms of when you were cast as Dragos and the idea of working in children's television, when at that point the only people who were doing live action really was kind of Crofts, and it was very cartoony and far more over the top than you were.
My involvement in Filmation and Jason Star Command is a testimony to never saying never. Because at one point I said, well, I'll never do a kid's show. Yeah, okay. Cut to that. It was a great experience for me, and yes, it was a family. You always had that feeling that everybody was there supporting you and making sure that everybody was on spot and doing, the best they could. And if there was anything anybody else could do to help, they were there. It was amazing, and I have such great memories, fond memories, poignant memories, and very funny memories, one of which I will share with you now. The studio where we shot that in was basically kind of in an industrial park area. And those places traditionally have salesmen that come by and want to sell you stuff all the time. Okay? And this guy kept coming to Filmation asking to talk to the owner. And the receptionist, who was a very sharp young lady, said, well, you know, he's not in. I'm sorry, he's not in here. Go away. And the guy kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And one day I was going to the front part of the building in wardrobe, okay, with the helmet and the cape and the 6-inch platform shoes and the laser beam eye. And I walked through, and that salesman was there, and he turned to the secretary and said, who's that? I said, he's the owner. The guy never came back. That was I'm the killer there. And it was such a great experience because probably some of you, or maybe most of you, don't know that we shot 15 episodes in 5 weeks. Okay? How the hell do you do that? Okay? Well, we didn't have 15 scripts. Okay? We had one script. And it was the only way that we could get that work done was to shoot like everything that happened in the control room all at the same time in all 15 episodes. Okay? It was probably the most mentally challenging.
Don't look at me!
You made me engage my brain. Okay? It was probably the most mentally challenging thing that I've ever done because you had to remember where you were in what story and who was doing what to who. And
You owe us a story, by the way.
okay. I'll send you a check. So, I just had an amazing time. It was wonderful. It was one of the greatest memories of the 50 years that I've been doing this that I ever had. And everybody was just a class act all the way down the line. It was a great time. And it was a great guy. And a testimony to following your passion. Because as I remember, you started with like 87 cents and a desire. You took it and built it into this empire. And you know, that up to 90 cents. So, you did.
Before we get to the clip, I want to get Tom T. You directed the Bravestarr movie, the first major direction. And Bravestarr was the second Native American hero that Filmation did, but it was also fairly involved for Filmation, which did a lot of reuse of animation and things like that. It had a lot of innovation in it. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ways in which Filmation brought innovative ideas to how animation was done?
Well, Lou was, we were dealing with CGI animation before anybody really knew what the hell it was. And there was a room with a couple guys, and we were trying to incorporate it into the movie and figure out how to get the cost of animation down and keep it in this country. And so that was an ongoing process, and we used several scenes of that in the Bravestarr film. And then Filmation had this thing, maybe you're familiar with, called the stock system, where we could reuse scenes, and it was a cost-saving measure, but the key became how to use it in an aesthetically pleasing way so you don't catch the trick. And that's what I always tried to do. And we came up with a stock system on that almost defies belief. Your standard animation stock scene would have a cell, has a couple of rectangular holes and a regular hole in the middle, and you shoot it. We came up with this thing it had 20 peg holes, and you could reposition it every which way. It was about as close as animation could get to a Rubik's Cube. It was very complicated, but I think it really upped the quality of the Bravestarr series. We could do a lot of stuff, and we could sort of open the range for multi-plane kind of shots, using different characters in different positions. And there was a whole lot going on, and Lou was really behind it because I think somehow he figured out that animation just couldn't stay as it was. The quality level had to keep going up. It was once again largely due to Lou had pioneered with the syndication, everybody was doing shows. There were 65 episodes of everything out there. So he needed to up the quality. You couldn't just get away with using the same headshots over and over and over again. And that became part of what we were doing. And Lou was always behind it. I don't think he knew what we were doing. But he let us do it. He let us do it. And that was one of the innovations, that was a step forward. We were really trying to push it and then and compete with what was out there. And what other kind of things that we pulled innovations?
A lot of lies.
Yeah, but, you know, and just everything about it. Like it was just, Lou was always the kind of guy. I got to give him credit. If you came to something,
He doesn't give me credit.
If you had an idea, he'd listen to it and he'd let you try to do it. And you know, we were always watching the budgets, but still, it became a task. I kind of agree with what was said earlier by a couple of people here, that you had to think different, and that's really a valuable thing, because that sort of became my credo of limitations to promote creativity. If you can do just anything, you do just kind of anything, and you can pay for it. But if you have to be really, really clever and make something work, it usually makes for a better end product, I believe.
Yeah, you did. Nice to be in. Oh, yeah, what is it?
I could add one thing about the stock shot system that will give you an example of how crazy TV censorship was, though. The Tarzan series used a lot of rotoscoping to make a very smooth, flowing series. It was a really innovative thing for Saturday morning. And they rotoscoped Tarzan throwing guys, and they would then put different costumes on the guys that he threw. One season, they had him throwing a conquistador over his shoulder. CBS said, fine, no problem with that. Next season, exact same footage, took it, put a Roman centurion costume on it. Oh no, that's too violent. We can't show it.
There was an instance of that in Jason Starkman as well. We were shooting this thing, and somebody from Standards and Practices, whatever that is, was on the set, and Jason did something to thwart me for the 800th time, and I slammed my fist on the control panel. Jason! And they said, no, that's violent, that's too scary. You can't do that. And so what they accepted was, Jason. By the
time I got to Filmation, I didn't deal with network standards and practices. I had to deal with Scheimer and Adele standards and practices. So there was always, that was probably my main issue. I would put things in shows or a movie that Lou would make me take out, or Arthur wouldn't care much for. And so that was sort of our self-policing. The Bravestarr, we had several scenes I had to delete and redo. Tex Hex getting a movie spit in space. Stuff that seems really mundane, given where animation is these days, but back then it was like a really big deal. In the Bravestarr movie, there was this real big discussion. I was in charge of the rotoscope for the stock scene, so I shot all that. And I see the Bravestarr walking away from camera. They were used just for a traveling shot. And so for the film, I gave it to an animator, and I told her, it was a female animator, I said, make his walk really sexy from behind, because this is for the girls in the audience. That's what I perceived that sort of before. And so we did that, and Lou was less than happy with how it came out, and we had to redo that scene. There were any number of things that we'd have to talk about, and I was called on the carpet fairly regularly, wasn't it?
No.
Yeah, no, my head. Yeah. And so, but that was part of it. It was all in trying to improve.
All right, so we're going to look really quickly at some pages from the upcoming book, Lou Scheimer, Creating the Filmation Generation, and we're going to show a couple of clips. We're going to show the unaired cartoon, then a clip from a project Darrel's working on, and then we're going to be wrapping up. So this is some pages from the laid out book. It'll be out on September 26th after a long wait. I know many of you have been asking for years. So this is some pages from early chapters. You obviously can't read them on the screen. Boy, it's not even loading correctly. There we go. it's written like a traditional biography with Lou's voice as the narrative flow. However, there is a huge amount of material in there that covers the history of animation and the making of the shows themselves, as well as things that happened at Filmation. So Crypto peeing on a forest fire in one scene. That's almost
Seems reasonable.
There's information in there about all the different shows, the music of the Archies. There's rare ads, such as this one, that was run in the trade papers. Pictures of the records, model sheets, information about Star Trek, including some of the designs for the original when were going to be doing Star Trek in the 1960s while the show was still on the air. And they were going to have the young cast of Star Trek. There's storyboards. There's an autographed card that Lou did for one of the trading card sets. And I think that gives you a few of the pages of the book. It's called Lou Scheimer, Creating the Filmation Generation. It will be out September 26th from tomorrow's, and the signing that we're doing, 12:30 to 1:30, you can get one of the facsimile posters signed by Lou and myself. That'll be today at booth 1301. We're also signing tomorrow at the same booth, and Michael Gray from Shazam will be joining us for that panel. So, right now we're going to roll the footage from an unaired, unseen by anyone except for some network heads who decided to pass on it stupidly, Filmation cartoon that's never been seen by the public. You'll figure out what it is.
Really, me too.
Number 2.
What the hell is this?
Cost saving.
Hell of a show.
You can see why the network passed on this.
I passed on it too.
It was new Uncle Croc's block, that's what it was.
There's one thing about Lou's Filmation that I don't think people talk about, and it's the fealty to the product that we did. That's affected my career. Tarzan, Flash Gordon, everything that they did, they didn't mock the properties. Many studios, they do something and they had to make it silly, they had to do something that Lou really stuck to it, because Lou is really, when you think about like the original fanboy, he was a Prince Valiant fan, which I didn't cover in the book, Flash Gordon, and when he brought these things to the screen, he stuck with the property. Archies was like the Archies in the comic. Tarzan was the Tarzan you always wanted to see. It wasn't just still Johnny Weissmuller again and again, that I couldn't talk. This was a real dignified Tarzan. And that had a real effect, because nowadays in animation, everybody does that kind of stuff. It seems sort of a given. Yeah, we'll do Batman as the Dark Knight. Yeah, we'll do things that are kind of like the comic books. Back then, it wasn't like that. And I think that's a really important part of Lou's legacy. It certainly has affected my career. I try to approach properties that I produce and direct with that same thing. If you're adapting a subject matter, it isn't mine to change, it's mine to honor. I should take that and make sure that the fans get what they want of it. Now look at something I've done and people go, what you do to my property I love so much. So I think it's something people really don't give Lou credit for.
Now, 100 years ago, BC, that's before credit cards, Horace Greeley said, "Go west, young man." Of course, 100 years ago, the West was little more than thousands of miles of rolling hills and peaceful Indians. I'm sure.
And we were forced to leave the fort.
Well, you just shot a hole in one, Chief. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the senators were listening to the general, which is pretty unusual for the senators because they're usually in last place. Say, General, why don't you send an ambassador to talk to the Indian chief?
Why, son, you took the word right out of my mouth. said to ask you why you wouldn't make peace, oh great chief. There'll be no peace around here till I get rid of my daughter! I don't get it. When the great stoneface comes to life and marries the princess, then and only then shall we have peace! Now where will I ever find anyone with a face like that?
Step right up, folks. I want to tell you about my magic elixir.
You said it would grow hair, you old cat! Look! Damn the lion!
Well, why don't you rub some on your chest and you can become your own lord? Well, I'll see you later.
Hey, Grouch, why don't you settle down and open up at the drugstore?
Don't be silly. What do we know about tuna salad prescription? Or even aspirin milkshake, for that matter.
Okay, maybe we open up at the bag. Washington will never believe that story about the great stone face.
Pardon me, sir. Do you know how to get to Apple?
No, I don't.
It's quite easy. All you do is go straight ahead about 30 miles.
Yikes! It's not too